Hey everybody, it's Rob from Cheap Comic Collector, and this is episode number 84. And today we're just going to be taking a look at these comics that I've recently read. Going to start off with Justice League Future's End. It's a one-shot from 2014. Got Kid Colt 164 from 1972. The Inspector, the Pink Panther Nemesis from 1975. That's issue number 4. And a Madhouse annual from Archie Comics. This is annual number 12, the 1974/75 edition. So we're just going to start off with Justice League Future's End. This one was okay. I didn't really understand a lot of the story. It's got the that lenticular cover that we've shown before. I think we showed that pretty recently. And so that's probably the neatest thing about the issue, honestly. It says it's a one-shot, but it starts off in the middle of a story because it's continued from somewhere else. And nowhere in the issue does it tell where it's continued from. So it's some other Future's End story. I don't know where. But yeah, Captain Atom attacking some kind of Justice League team on Mars. You got Dawnstar in there, which is weird because she's from the Legion of Superheroes. And Gorilla Grodd is there as a bad guy, and Martian Manhunter. And eventually it's revealed that basically Martian Manhunter, there's a prison on Mars that they've put a lot of the supervillains in, and Captain Atom's there trying to free everybody. And it's written by Jeff Lemire. Artist is Jed Doherty. And it's good, but because I didn't read the previous chapters and this is my first exposure to Future's End, I really just have no idea what's going on. I gotta say it's good writing, it's good art. It's really lousy editing because, like I said, it doesn't tell you where. It says it's a second part of a two-part story. Doesn't tell you where that story started at. Doesn't tell you where to go to continue the storyline after this particular story ends. There's no kind of checklist for the, reading order. There's just nothing other than this is a one-shot, yet it's the second part of a two-part story. So, kind of odd. I did look it up on the internet, and it took me a while to find it, but it's continued from Justice League United Future's End. So there is that. But like I said, I found that on some fan site. It wasn't on any official site. So then we got Kid Colt Outlaw 164 from 1972, and nice cover. The kid on his horse. Stop him, you hombres. Get Kid Colt. And turns out this is a reprint from earlier stories. It is it's got a Stan Lee and Jack Keller credit there. And basically Kid Colt's hanging out in town. Nobody knows who he is, and he's grateful for that because, he's a wanted man. And the town bully comes in, and of course Kid Colt fights him and eventually stands up to him on behalf of the town. And apparently it's a much shorter story than I remembered because it ends there. And he's afraid that, that once they find out who he is, they're going to turn him in for the reward, but they don't believe that he's actually him, so he gets away with it. And then you got another Kid Colt story, and these were fun. I enjoyed reading these. I probably haven't read a Marvel Western in a very long time. Unless I've reviewed one recently on the channel that has just slipped my mind. There's a third story, The Iron Giant, and it's kind of a little bit of a ghost story where the train has a mind of its own. And when I was looking up the information on the issue, it is reprinted from like one of the Marvel Atlas titles, you know, whatever the titles were, Mystery Tales Unknown, whatever issue it was reprinted from, I don't know, but it was one of those, but it's also a Western. So, and then of course you have the Marvel bulletins, the Gangway World Madcap Marvel marches merrily on, and I always loved these pages. I adored the crazy headline, and I enjoyed looking through to see what other issues were out. And Stan's soapbox was honestly hit or miss sometimes, but sometimes he was just plugging stuff. And then we got King Cold Outlaw, where he gets involved in some Indians, and Indian saves his life because he had saved the Indian's life years ahead of time, years before that. So he's repaying the debt. And that was pretty much it. It was a good issue. I enjoyed it. I was a little disappointed that it was reprints because it didn't seem like it was. You know, there was no reprint credits in the issue like they did later, where they had like the little blurb at the bottom saying what issue it was reprinted from. So then we have the Inspector number 4 from 1975. And this, first of all, it's got a Roadrunner ad for Hostess Twinkies, or no, Fruit Pies. And but the Inspector, yeah, it gave me a couple chuckles actually. I chuckled out loud at a couple points. There's some more adult humor in there than I would have expected for a kid's Gold Key comic. That gave me a chuckle here and there. It does have a little bit of a racial stereotyping there with the Chinese guy. But I mean, honestly, the Inspector himself could be considered a racist stereotype in some circles. So, you know, as long as you're willing to overlook that kind of stuff, it's fine. So, and then we got a Pink Panther backup where he gets involved with some aliens, and this was fun. I liked the character design for this little guy here. And then it goes back to another Inspector story. And the Inspector stories, surprisingly, they do not have Pink Panther in them. They're just the Inspector. And he has his boss that he deals with. And they were fun. It was a fun issue. I enjoyed it. More than, like a lot of these, I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. So that's good. And then we have Madhouse Annual from 1974, number 12. And let's take a good look at the robot cover here. The robots are on strike. Don't know if that's appropriate considering the writer's strike in Hollywood over the use of AI, but it's interesting. And got some little guys here and around the top of the cover. Dan DiCarlo did the art on the cover, and I was surprised to discover that this is nothing but reprints also. I thought this would have been original material, but it's all the stories were reprinted from either the regular Madhouse series or Tales Calculated to Drive You Bats. I think some of the stories were from number 1 of that. So these are kind of crazy stories, a little bit Mad Magazine, but not so edgy. They're kind of Archie style stories, but without the Archie characters. So that was kind of interesting. You got in this one, they're trying to win a horse race, and the horses are a takeoff on the Marx Brothers, which gave me kind of a chuckle there a little bit. I don't know how many kids reading it would realize that, but it was funny. Got a little one-page gag of aliens not being allowed in the movie theater because they don't have adult supervision, and a witch doctor story here for just one page. And this one was interesting. I enjoyed this. Hugo the Werewolf. Definitely, this one was reprinted from Tales Calculated to Drive You Bats. Basically, there's a werewolf who's tired of people running away from him, so he has his... he gets a makeover, so now he's a 90-pound weakling, and then people beat him up because he's a 90-pound weakling, so he wants to go back to being a werewolf. And we got the Archie, ever-present Archie subscription blank. And monsters, scare your fellow monsters with human masks. Teenage boy, teenage girl masks. There's nothing scarier than that. And then there's this is actually an advertisement, I think. Didn't read it. But some interesting work for an Archie comic for those of you that aren't familiar with anything but the Archie gang. This story here, Have Typewriter Will Travel. It has a guy that wants to be a writer, and his writing stinks because he has no experience, and this alien shows up and does the stories for him, so then he gets famous because his stories become so lifelike and believable, and of course there's a little bit of a twist at the end, and the pharmacist is asking somebody if they want family size or economy size, and of course the guy wants the giant size for obvious reasons. And then you have a robot story where the robots are put out of work because basically man has made better machines. So the robots are basically homeless and no place to go. And then we have a witchcraft story. This was interesting. So yeah, a lot of this was from Tales Calculated to Drive You Bats, obviously. And the artwork in this one was interesting, too. It might be the same guy that did the werewolf story. It was basically two artists on the whole issue, so I think basically it was Dan DiCarlo on some of the stories, and then another guy on, whose name I don't remember because I'd never heard it before, that did the stories from Tales Calculated to Drive You Bats. So, and then this one has a ventriloquist act that has a little bit of a twist that I did see the end coming on that one. And animals from outer space, such as the cowgaroo and the octodeer and the bird dog. And then we have a Tut Tut the Mummy story, that the mummy doesn't want to go to the museum until they show him a picture of the girl mummy that's already there. and he ends up living happily ever after. And that was the end of the issue, so just ads on the back. And that was it. That was those 4 issues. They were fun. Favorites? Hard choice on which one was my favorite. I would probably say Kid Colt, just because it gave me a lot of nostalgia to read a Marvel Western again. My brothers, that I think I've mentioned before, the reason I got into comics ever in the first place, because when I was little, my brothers wouldn't let me touch their comics, and they had mostly Westerns. And by the time I got them, the covers were all ripped off and so on and so forth. But I read them to death, even though, they were missing pages and stuff. So that was probably my favorite, but that's just me. Story-wise, I don't know. They all had a little bit of cleverness to them. Good stuff. Good stuff throughout. No, nothing that was really stand out. Other than the blaring bad editing in the Future's End titles, which, I mean, I just can't believe they don't at least put down like a little, cliff note saying, hey, this story is continued from such and such. It's just kind of inexcusable, really. I mean, what's an editor's job if they don't even do something like that? So I don't know what's going on with DC editing in more recent years, but apparently they just put the package together and don't really have that much input is what I'm seeing. So I could be wrong. Yeah, so that about wraps it up. Thanks for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe. And tomorrow, I think I'm going to take you on a little bit of tour of my work in progress on the room that I'm in now. As you know, this is where I did the live stream from. This is where I did the episode showing you how to read comics for free on the internet. And so I made some room in the garage, and so a lot of the stuff in this room is getting moved into the garage, which will leave this room for comics. So I'm going to take you on a little bit of a tour of that tomorrow, and I will see you then. Have a great day.